Electoral reform and democratic accountability. Under the national project, electoral reform is considered necessary to reduce party political corruption, career political culture, blind party loyalty, unaccountable governance, and the separation between elected representatives and the public they govern. The framework argues that democratic systems weaken when voters support political parties regardless of policy. Representatives prioritize party structures over local communities. Elected officials abandon campaign commitments without consequence. And political institutions become insulated from direct accountability. The purpose of electoral reform is therefore to strengthen direct democratic accountability, local representation, policy-based voting, and constitutional trust between citizens and elected officials. Local elections. Under the proposed framework, all local elections operate under a non-party independent system. Political parties are prohibited from participating directly within local government elections. All candidates for councils, mayors, local authority leadership, and other local civic offices must stand as independent representatives rather than party political candidates. The objective of this structure is to reduce automatic party line voting, national political tribalism within local governance, and dependence upon centralized party organizations. The framework argues that local government functions most effectively when representatives are judged upon competence, local policy, public conduct, community reputation, and practical plans for the area they represent, rather than party identity. Voters are therefore encouraged to evaluate candidates individually instead of voting based upon long-standing party loyalty. National elections. Political parties remain legal within national parliamentary elections. However, elected members of Parliament are considered directly accountable to the electorate based upon the specific policies and commitments used to obtain office. All parliamentary candidates are therefore required to formally publish campaign commitments, policy priorities, constitutional positions, and major legislative intentions prior to election. These declarations become part of the permanent public electoral record. The purpose of this system is to reduce deceptive campaigning, political opportunism, and situations where representatives gain office through promises they later abandon without consequence. Parliamentary recall mechanism. The framework proposes a constitutional parliamentary accountability mechanism allowing constituency-level recall elections under limited and highly regulated conditions. A recall process may only be considered if there is evidence that an elected MP has fundamentally contradicted or abandoned the declared platform upon which they were elected. The purpose of the mechanism is not to punish ordinary political disagreement or changing national circumstances, but to address severe breaches of electoral trust. Constitutional stability safeguards. To prevent political instability, harassment campaigns, or permanent election cycles, the recall system operates under strict constitutional limitations. These protections include no recall attempts permitted during the first 12 months of a parliamentary term, strict public petition thresholds before proceedings may begin, independent constitutional court review, formal evidence requirements demonstrating direct contradiction of declared campaign commitments, and a limit of one recall attempt per parliamentary term within each constituency. The framework argues that accountability systems must not become tools for political revenge, organized destabilization, media-driven panic campaigns, or permanent partisan conflict. The purpose of these restrictions is to preserve governmental stability while still maintaining meaningful democratic accountability. Voluntary constituency approval mechanism. The framework also recognizes that elected representatives may occasionally need to alter positions due to economic crisis, national emergencies, new evidence, security concerns, or changing national conditions. Because of this, MPs may avoid recall proceedings if they voluntarily seek direct constituency approval for major policy reversals. Under this system, constituency voters may participate in a formal approval vote, allowing the electorate itself to decide whether the policy change is acceptable, without requiring a full recall election. If approved by the constituency electorate, the MP retains office and the issue is considered constitutionally resolved. The purpose of this mechanism is to preserve democratic flexibility, maintain public legitimacy, and allow representatives to adapt when necessary while remaining directly accountable to voters. Purpose of electoral reform. The proposed electoral structure is intended to reduce blind party loyalty, strengthen local democratic accountability, encourage policy-based voting, reduce political corruption, and reinforce the principle that elected representatives remain accountable to the people who elected them. The framework argues that democratic systems function most effectively when local government remains community-focused, representatives are judged individually, political authority remains tied to public trust, and democratic accountability continues after election rather than ending once office is secured. 3.1 Cost, Electoral Reform and Democratic Accountability. The Electoral Reform chapter is similar to the Constitution chapter. The reforms are politically significant but relatively inexpensive compared to housing, defense, energy, pensions, or national service. Most costs come from administration, legal drafting, public information systems, and the recall mechanism. Low-cost scenario. Assumptions. Existing Electoral Commission structure retained. Recall system built onto existing by-election framework. Digital publication of candidate commitments. Very limited legal challenges. Existing courts handle disputes. One-off costs. Item cost. Legislative drafting £10 million. Electoral system updates £20 million. Candidate commitment database £15 million. Public information campaign £20 million. IT and administrative changes £15 million. Total one-off cost £80 million. Annual running cost. Item cost. Candidate record system £5 million. Recall administration £10 million. Electoral oversight £10 million. Annual cost £25 million. Medium cost scenario. Assumptions. Dedicated commitment tracking system. Larger public awareness campaign. Recall review procedures established. Constitutional court involvement. Moderate legal challenges. One-off costs. Item cost. Legislative and constitutional drafting £25 million. National Electoral Database £30 million. Public Information Campaign £50 million. Recall Framework Setup £25 million. Administrative Transition £20 million. Total one-off cost £150 million. Annual running cost. Item cost. Electoral oversight staff £20 million. Recall review administration £20 million. Legal review and compliance £10 million. Annual cost £50 million. High cost scenario. Assumptions. Significant legal resistance. Multiple judicial reviews. Large number of recall challenges. Major redesign of electoral administration. Extended transition period. One-off costs. Item cost. Legal drafting and review £50 million. Electoral systems upgrade £50 million. National Public Information Campaign £75 million. Recall infrastructure £50 million. Legal challenge defense £75 million. Total one-off cost £300 million. Annual running cost. Item cost. Electoral administration £40 million. Recall system operation £40 million. Constitutional review costs £20 million. Annual cost, £100 million. Local election reform. Not costed. The proposal for non-party local elections is intentionally not costed at this stage. While implementation costs would likely be relatively modest, the proposal would require significant redesign of local democratic structures and candidate systems. A full costing should only be attempted once a detailed working model has been developed and tested. Net fiscal impact. Scenario 1 off cost. Annual cost. Low £80 million, £25 million. Medium £150 million, £50 million. High £300 million, £100 million. Recommended planning figure. For Treasury modeling purposes. Recommended working assumption. One-off cost, £150 million. Annual cost, £50 million. This assumes moderate implementation complexity and some legal challenge while remaining realistic for a national electoral reform program.